Are you turning to food for comfort and stress relief? Well, then stick around because in this episode of the Mental Health Toolbox, we are talking with emotional eating expert Jessica Procini, who is helping us to discover how to triumph over emotional eating and regain control over our lives. So let's go.
I started to peel back the layers and ask questions like, well, what did I eat? And why did I choose that? Why did I do that? I started to look at what were the sensations that I was feeling in my body as I was going through before, during, and after an overeating experience. So I really started to, instead of turning away from the thing that brought me so much angst and chaos, I actually turned straight towards it.
Jessica Procini is on a mission to help high-achieving women heal their roots of their emotional eating so they can use food as a nourishing asset rather than a self-destructive way to cope, soothe, and attempt to escape their busy, stressful lives. She created Escape from Emotional Eating, a unique process grounded in a decade of research, a background in psychology of eating, transformational coaching methods, and her own personal emotional eating journey because Overeaters Anonymous did not resonate with her and the 932 hours she spent in therapy, which never helped her end her fight with food. She knew there needed to be a different kind of support, one that got to the roots of emotional eating. Now 100% free from her compulsions with food, Jessica helps other high-achieving women get to the roots of their emotional eating through her year-long programs, retreats, keynotes, and workshops. As a sought-after thought leader, Jessica's work has received multiple awards from the Institute of Psychology of Eating and has been featured in noteworthy media outlets such as ABC, CBS, and Mind, Body, Green. For more information about Jessica, her life-changing work, and to discover what is at the root of her emotional eating, visit escapefromemotionaleating.com. And if you're curious about her professional and personal background, you can head over to her website under About Jessica, and you'll find her personal and professional experience laid out for you here, so you can definitely see she walks the walk and talks the talk. You can see her lineage of education at the bottom here, and that'll give you a little background into her expertise. All right, so let's meet Jessica. Hey, if you're getting value from this content and you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to the MHT newsletter. That way you don't miss out on any new content as it's released. And I have some freebies waiting for you there as well. You can find the link in the description below.
So much for having me here.
Yes, my pleasure, Jessica. Thank you so much for being on and making time to share your words of wisdom with our audience here on the Mental Health Toolbox. So, very excited to have you on. So, welcome.
Yay, thank you.
Excellent. Yes. So, I'm wondering if you could start us off by sharing a little bit about your background and what led you down this journey of emotional eating and becoming an expert in this field yourself.
Yeah, so I guess it all really started with this thing that I had with granola. Granola is a seemingly healthy food, but when I would eat it, I could literally go through a bag of it in a matter of seconds. And I didn't think there was that big of a deal about it at the time. Like I said, granola is healthy. But as time went on and as I got older and life became more and more complicated and overwhelming, I really discovered that I was an emotional eater. And I actually want to just highlight some pieces of my journey and my story because it's a long story and there's many zigs and zags. But I think the first piece I really want to share is just getting over the shock and overwhelm that I was an emotional eater. Because if you're watching this video or you've seen pictures of me from the outside, someone would never assume that I had or have issues with food. It was really a shock to me that I was an emotional eater because I didn't have hundreds of pounds to lose. And And a lot of times we hear about emotional eating being associated with being overweight. But for me, I wasn't really overweight. Like I said, I didn't have hundreds of pounds to lose. And at the time that I discovered I was an emotional eater, I had already received certification in nutrition. I had an extensive background and career in health and wellness. Um, you would have thought I would have been able to self identify, but it actually took a really, really long time for me to actually truly own up to the fact that I was an emotional eater. So that was part one because, like I said, I didn't fit into these extremes. I didn't have hundreds of pounds to lose. And my issues with food weren't as extreme or severe to take me to like an eating disorder. I kind of fell more into the middle road, um, where my relationship with food was this secret burden that I really bared. So that's the first thing that I want to share about my journey. The second thing I want to share is that when I finally got over the shock that I was an emotional eater, I really tried to find support that was right and aligned for me. And I searched and I searched and I searched, and I was coming up with nothing. I had already been through hundreds and hundreds of hours of therapy, and it just always felt like we were beating around the bush and never really getting to the core issues and connections of my dysfunctional relationship with food. I also knew that going to Overeaters Anonymous wasn't the right place for me either, because I really didn't resonate with like a food addiction. I also didn't resonate with this mindset that my issues with food were just something I would have to deal with for the rest of my life. I think more than anything, I wanted to be free. I wanted to put this stuff behind me. And I wanted to, most of all, maximize my full potential. I didn't want to be going to a weekly meeting like for the rest of my life for eternity. That just didn't really resonate with me. And then, so when I was searching, I just kind of felt like a lot of the support out there, again, fell into these extremes of a surface approach, like eat healthier, work out more, which I was already checking all of those boxes, or something extreme like a food addiction program, which again just wasn't for me. And I started to become really, really frustrated that there wasn't support out there, and I wasn't finding support for people who were like me, who really strive for excellence, who can tend to be a bit of a perfectionist, a pusher, a doer, a go getter, but are using food as a way to cope with the high level of stress and pressures in our lives. And that was really when I like felt like I kind of came to this choice point. And this is the third thing about my journey I want to share, is that I reached this choice point where I had a decision to make. I had the choice of either going down the road of my issues with food are just something I'm going to have to live with. It's something that I'm just going to have to learn to kind of deal with. And I'm never really going to be free from. So that was kind of like option A. Or option B was this kind of internal pull and this internal knowing that I can refuse to settle, meaning that I can choose to believe that this too can change. That even though at the time my issues with food felt really overwhelming and unbearable, that no kind of hurdle can be too big or too hard to jump. And as I was sitting there kind of in my apartment at the time by myself, realizing like, wow, like I am at this fork in the road, I really felt this internal, like knowing, some people may call it intuition, But there was this part of me that was like, this can't be as good as it gets. This can't be like just the way it is. Like there has to be a way through this. There has to be another way. Like we were just not put on this planet to kind of be operating at like half mast, as they say. So that was when I made the decision to refuse to settle. And from that seemingly small, minute moment, really everything changed. I think that's what really set me up to use myself and my background and my expertise, so my personal and professional experience, and really investigate every single nook and cranny of my relationship with food. It's what ultimately set me up to truly find freedom and happiness in my relationship with food and my body. And it's ultimately what then brought me to what is now the creation of Escape from Emotional Eating. And so it's been 12 years since Escape from Emotional Eating was created. I've been free from emotional eating for years and years now. And food now it's nourishing, it's an asset, it's a valuable tool. We do not engage in self-sabotaging behaviors. I'm able to eat, honor when I'm full, and move on. I mean, my relationship with food is so much simpler now than it was back then. So that's kind of like highlight pieces of what has been almost decades long from back then till now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jessica. So I know that's a very bird's eye view of your experience, and it's easy to maybe summarize that. But on a real level, you've been doing some really hard work to identify what the contributing factors must be to the emotional eating, right? The habits, the
Mhm.
motivations, the cycles. And I'm really curious because a program such as the one you have, right, the Emotional Freedom Program, is built upon factors that you've discovered in your own journey that work. And so I'm wondering how you went about discovering what worked for you, the trial and error process, because emotional eating is in an eating disorder, but emotional eating in general is a very complicated thing, right? People
Mhm.
will overindulge for a lot of different reasons. I know when I was in college, in graduate school, we had these all you can eat dispensers. You said granola, so that really registers with me because we had these all you could eat like trail mix, containers, and they had the cups
Mhm.
lined up. And graduate school had like 3 hour classes like back to back, and so you're like in class for 9-10 hours straight and lectures. And so what do you do as a college student? To stay awake and yeah, munch munch munch. What
Right.
are you doing? You're studying. You munch munch munch, and that I've weighed the most I ever did in my life being in graduate school. And yes, we traditionally think of granola and trail mix as healthy snacks, but because of a lot of factors, and namely the high carbohydrate level and other additives like M&Ms, right? Things
Yes.
like that. As good as it is, or healthy chocolate, um, can definitely contribute to weight gain and stuff. But it's not just because one is bored. For me, it was the stress level, and I
Right.
know you deal specifically with high achieving women, so I know you're really identifying and touching on that pressure point, which is the stress, right? High achieving, what comes with achievement, with any success, right, is a certain
Yes.
level of stress, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So part of, I would say, I would give like three, maybe two or three pieces that really set me up to kind of create what now is Escape from Emotional Eating. And from that choice point of like, I refuse to settle, what came after that was a willingness to be a student to my own process. It
Mm.
was a willingness to, instead of engaging in self judgment and self loathing after an overeating experience, to shift that into curiosity. So I started to take like an eating experience because all I could really handle at the time was looking at one because there
Mm-hmm.
were just so
Mm-hmm.
many. But looking at it once the experience had been over and I had some spaciousness to actually look at myself in that scenario, I started to peel back the layers and ask questions like, well, what did I eat? And why did I choose that? Why did I do that? I started to look at what were the sensations that I was feeling in my body as I was going through before, during, and after an overeating experience. So I really started to, instead of turning away from the thing that brought me so much angst and chaos, I actually turned straight towards it. And at the time, I didn't know that that was what I was doing. But now looking back, I can see like, oh, that was really smart. Because if we want something to change, it's not going to change by us turning away from it. We have to turn towards it. That was the first thing. Then from there, the other thing that I started to realize as I was going through all of these ways of trying to heal and kind of quote unquote failing was that nothing was really teaching me or telling me how to manage the emotional side of my body. I was always hearing, well, feel your feelings, feel your feelings, feel your feelings. I'm like, but what does that mean? Like, give me the choreography. Like, like, like how? So that was where I started filling in missing pieces by creating tools for myself to help me bridge these gaps along these missing pieces. So I would go to therapy and I would hear my therapist say, feel your feelings. But when I would go home, the pantry would be calling my name. I would be right back into the old cycles. And I'm just like frustrated. So over time, I came up and created this tool called Digesting Emotions. And it basically was a bridge that supported me in truly feeling my feelings, but also knowing that there's a way out of them and that we go in and we go through and we go out to the other side. And what this helped me do is connect it back to food to be able to see, like, oh, anxiety is one of the reasons why I'm eating. Oh, I'm actually a hypervigilant person. And that shows up in my relationship with food. And it started to help me make these connections um, in these missing pieces so that therapy wasn't in just one silo and food wasn't in just another silo, but I was able to start to weave them together. And that's ultimately what now is part of the framework of my work with my clients is we actually start step one, phase one, with building emotional fitness and having these tools to be able to increase our energetic and emotional capacity so that we can start to recognize that food isn't the only option, that other things and other methods and even other mindsets will support us in coping and then thriving through hard times. Um, so I would say those are some of the key pieces that supported me in creating this framework.
Again, definitely sounds like you did a lot of work, and if I remember correctly, 932 hours, but who's counting,
Yes,
of therapy, right?
I
As you're
counted.
learning. Yeah. I'm
I
sure you did.
counted.
I'm sure you worked on things like emotional regulation and naming
Yeah.
your feelings and learning how to work on distress tolerance, as you say,
Hmm.
to feel your feelings, right? To build that emotional resilience
Yes.
without those compensatory behaviors that we often talk about, right? Whether that's
Right.
food or something else to lean on so we don't have to be present with our feelings, right? To mask them,
Right.
to distract, to detract. Yeah. So those are all very powerful, but you found a way to package this in a way that's obviously very effective, right? You have a very
Hmm.
good track record. Um, I'm wondering how your approach maybe differs than traditional programs or therapy around uh, emotional eating.
Yeah. So I would say the first thing that really differentiates my work from, we'll just call them traditional modalities,
Mm,
is the coupling of my professional expertise and personal experience. This was
mm,
something that I really found was missing as I was trying different treatment methods and trying different modalities, is that no one was really willing to own up and say, hey, I've been there. And I know
mm,
what it feels like to constantly be thinking about food. And I know what it feels like to move and eat past a point of satiation. And I know how to get out of that. Um, that was something that I know a lot of my clients now really search for, is okay. I don't want just the clinical side of it. I also want someone who's walked through my shoes and can share personal experience. So that's one thing that really sets me apart. The other thing is some of the strengths that I possess are really what set my work, specifically my one on one work with my clients, apart from others. So, one of the things is that I'm extremely, and I use it, it is one of my top strengths in my work, is my intuition and being able to pick up on what people are saying beneath the words. So being able to hear what they're saying, but then be able to bring something forward that is like what they're actually saying from the
mm,
heart, or maybe they don't even have words to say it. So using my intuitive strength, and I would even say my highly sensitive strengths, as a highly sensitive person, to be able to help a client accelerate their journey so they don't have to spend so much time in story, or they don't have to
mm,
spend so much time explaining certain scenarios or situations. Number one, because I have that personal experience. I know it, I lived it, I breathed it. And to be able to pull from what they're saying and most important. Um, there's so many other things I feel like that also make my work so much different. One of the other things is that I am not here for quick fixes. If you're looking for a program that's like 8 weeks to freedom from emotional eating,
mm,
or you know freedom from emotional eating in 3 months, this is not the place,
mm,
because the work that I am here to do is to create long lasting, real change. And in order to do that, we need a solid amount of time. We need a solid amount of energy and resources given to this healing journey. So that's why my programs are a year long. Sometimes we need even more than that to really be able to make peace in one's relationship with food. But what's also really beautiful is that at the core of all my work with my clients is that it really is about your relationship with yourself. So, our relationship with food is simply a symptom of our relationship with ourselves. So, while on one level we are healing someone's relationship with food, on a deeper level, we're actually healing their relationship with themselves.
mm.
And what's great about that is you are the common denominator in all aspects of your life. So it ripples out. The work that we do ripples out to how you show up for your family, how you're showing up for work, um, enforcing boundaries with others, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not just this little pigeonhole of food and what we put in our bodies, but it expands way, way, way beyond just what we're doing at the table.
Wow. You definitely speak from a place of lived experience, and it shows, right? Because that's a lot of the work. And whenever we're talking about personal development, right? And those interpersonal skills, right? The boundary setting, identifying our own emotions, being able to see things from somebody else's perspective, being able to see ourselves objectively. I mean, this is the work. This is the deep work, right? That
Yeah.
often happens. And whatever vehicle you choose to use, that is the deep work, you know. And I know that you have, background as a certified holistic practitioner, right?
Hmm.
You have a background in psychodrama, right?
Hmm. Yes.
You are certified neuro NLP, right? Neuro
Yes.
linguistic programming, and so
Yes.
you have sharpened your saws tools around those things, and so I'm not surprised when you say intuition that what you're saying is you're picking up on those nonverbal aspects or the words between words, even that you're able to
Hmm.
pick up on those things because that is the art of people work, right?
Yes. I think that's also why I love working with my clients and why I love one-on-one work. It's something that I've I know that my clients receive so much value from because they tell me, but it's something that I really love. It's how I love working is one-on-one with my clients because there's just so much that gets revealed without even needing to put a story behind it or even be able to articulate it because in some ways our body is able to communicate it even if we're not able to put the language behind it.
Very true. And oftentimes we need help finding the words from other
Yes.
people, right?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a book that I think it was written, was it Freud's son? I don't remember who wrote it, but it was called Words Were Originally Magic, right?
What?
Because
I
of
haven't heard of
yeah,
this.
it's a classic because of the connotation behind what words mean. So it's not just semantics, it's everything we attach to words, right? That's why the way
Yeah.
we, in therapy, we talk about catching our thoughts, right? Because not all thoughts are valid in the sense of the meaning that we are attaching to them and how we interpret things and events. And, that's what's so hard with behavior change, right? Is
Yeah.
because our behavior is so centered around the meanings that we ascribe to how we make sense of the world, how the patterns that we play out, the people that we are, influenced by, right? All of those
Yeah.
things, and so
Yeah.
it's challenging stuff. And you've chosen to take on Goliath, when it comes to personal problems, eating disorders, I won't even touch it.
Yeah.
It's and I know there's different levels of eating disorders. We're talking about emotional eating in this regard. There's definitely when we're talking about like bulimia, purging
Hmm.
behavior, binge purge behavior, anorexia. Those are things obviously that are treated at a inpatient program level, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking more specifically about this thorn in the side, right? Of
Hmm.
people who, as you would say, are high achievers, but people who really care about their best selves, people who
Yeah.
who are making an A+ effort to be their best selves, yet there's this thorn in their side,
Right.
which is this emotional eating coping mechanism, right? To
Right.
manage the stress, to decompress really is what it sounds like to me from all of the buildup from everything else that one is trying to manage, one is trying to stay
Yeah.
on top of, right?
Yeah. Decompressing and using food to decompress is just one of the ways that we can emotionally eat. Sometimes we can use food as a way to entertain, particularly if someone is feeling bored. Another way that we can use food is to disassociate or to essentially like leave our bodies or even a situation. Um, there's other ways as well as like avoiding certain things, denying certain things. For example, like denying your feelings or denying that you feel a certain way. This often shows up a lot with anger. Anger can be a really tricky emotion, particularly for women to feel or even acknowledge that they feel angry, and food or other substances can definitely come in as a way to try to pretend like they're not angry when really deep down inside they're seething. So there's so many ways that we can, and I say we being the emotional eater realm, that we can use food as an ill-intended purpose. And I feel like when we ultimately align ourselves with how food can actually be an asset, how it can actually be a productive tool, how we can actually receive true benefits from an eating experience or even food itself, that's when we take a high achiever and we take them up to the next level. And what's been really great is seeing how my clients will take that renewed energy, that sense of consciousness, that happiness that is restored from healing their relationship with food, and then how they take it into these other areas of their lives, whether it's taking their business to the next level, mothering their kids like a she wolf, or something else. But there is an even better benefit to our relationship with food when we really come into true alignment with it.
Yeah, so it's not just about managing weight, right? It's
No.
about managing our energies.
Yes, which then in turn supports us in managing our weight. What I find is that oftentimes when weight is such a focus, when it's like, I gotta lose weight, I gotta lose weight, I gotta lose weight, there's a lot under the surface that needs to be addressed and needs to be healed before the physical body can then actually have the green light to let go, and let go by losing weight. So, this is why I say explicitly on my website and in my programs that this is not a traditional weight loss program. In fact, I really am hesitant to even take on clients who come to me saying, I want to lose weight, because there's so much beneath the surface that needs to be addressed before it can physically manifest in weight loss. And here at Escape from Emotional Eating, we do that deeper work. So, yeah, this is not just about managing weight.
Yeah. Right. It makes sense because I've heard from nutritionists I've had on before say that oftentimes when it comes to weight loss, the challenge is the body doesn't want to let go of weight when it's stressed. Yet the
Right.
process of trying to lose weight and build this expectation up in one's head that I must lose weight, I have to lose weight. If you're stressing yourself out in the process of trying to lose weight, it's going to backfire. Sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so,
It's scientifically proven that if your stress levels are not even people who are listening might even be like, well, I'm not really that stressed. But if we have a chronic, so an ongoing low level of stress, for example, someone who is always go, 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 or do, 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 and more, and just a real pusher in life, that can create just a sense of like their normal level of stress is pretty high. So this is where we don't want to be looking at like, oh, are you stressed? Or are you not? We want to be looking at the whole picture of well, can you articulate how you feel, or is stress always the go-to response?
right. So I'm wondering, do you incorporate? I know you do retreats. You've had like 11 years, right, so far. So
Yes,
it's a
yes,
lot.
something like that. I've lost
Yeah,
count.
that's super cool. I've never been on a retreat. I should go.
What? It's
I
the
know.
best way to
I
learn. It's
know,
one of my
right?
favorite ways, both to
Yeah.
be a student and to be a teacher, is to be in person in like your own little bubble where you can clearly see the issues and the changes that need to be made, and even start practicing the changes, so that when you go back home you're like, oh, I got this. I know what it feels like to ride a bike because I just went to a retreat that was all teaching me that. And
Mm-hmm.
we were practicing. So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Excellent. So I imagine you incorporate some kind of mindfulness
Yeah. So,
into your retreats, I don't know if that's part of your program in itself or that's reserved for the retreats, but I imagine that's a big part of the de-stressing.
yeah, I guess I would have to ask you, like, when you say mindfulness, what do you mean? Because there
Mm-hmm.
can be so many different things associated with it. So I have to hand this question back to you and
Touche.
ask
Yes.
you.
Absolutely, because I know we say mindfulness, but that can be physical minding, that can grounding, that can be mental grounding, that can be
Right.
biofeedback, that can be self-soothing, that can be meditation, right? That can be a number of things, right?
Yeah.
Be a
Yeah.
nature walk.
Yeah. So, I mean, the retreats and overall my work as a whole is really designed to support clients in connecting back to themselves, whether they're on retreat or whether they're at home. While I don't particularly use even the word mindfulness in my work, just because of it often can bring past frustrations with mindfulness forward for clients, particularly those who are high achievers.
Mm-hmm.
So I will often say, like, consciousness, about being conscious and being awake and aware, and to be able to recognize and connect certain patterns. So, how that can show up on, let's just use a retreat, for example. So, on my retreats, we actually do not start at like 8 in the morning or even 9 in the morning. We often start between 10 and 11 in the morning to really support the clients in using the morning differently, using the morning to take care of themselves. And as people who strive for excellence, this is like revolutionary because usually, as a striver, you'll hit the ground running. It's like even before your eyes open, you're ready to go. So, going on a retreat where this is kind of flipped on its head gives the client an opportunity to experiment. What do I actually need in my morning when the space is already created for me? So then, once we're together in person, yes, we do certain grounding techniques. Yes, we like the environment is designed for mindfulness in the way you were, in all the ways you were sharing. But one of the ways that I specifically design it for clients in a retreat setting is around food. So we do eat together on retreats. It is a part of the actual
So
experience.
it's not a week-long water fast.
No. So, like, so we when we have lunch, for example, it is a silent lunch. So I will tell everyone, when lunch is beginning, and as we are lining up to get our food, and we do it from like buffet style on purpose to support conscious choice with what they choose to put on their plate and what they choose to take or leave. But we start with a silent lunch to be able to just eliminate all distractions. And what's really interesting and what's most powerful is how past programming will show up in the silence. So, without being able to use words, you're not able to kind of compare yourself to other people. You're not able to distract through conversation. You really are left with you, yourself, your body, and food. Um, and that's where, in a safe space, we could start to connect them, the client, back to themselves. And even throughout the pandemic and when we were all forced to stay at home, I had so many clients asking me to even just lead these silent meal experiences virtually because of the space that was created when I facilitated them. So there's so many other ways throughout a retreat that consciousness, mindfulness, connecting with self is created. But these are just some of the more tangible pieces of evidence of what I've consciously created to support and facilitate that connection with self.
Wow, I love that, and I love the term strivers. That you use.
Yeah.
Strivers oftentimes, self-care goes by the wayside. You don't have time for that. I got things to
Yeah.
do. I'll take care of myself later. And I
Yeah.
think when you talk about the programming with the silent meals, that's part of it. I assume is
Mm-hmm.
reprogramming to put self first, right? Self-care first, as
Yeah.
opposed to just kind of an
Yeah.
afterthought, right? Whereas food becomes less of
Exactly.
just a going through the motions, and it becomes more of an experience, right?
Yes. An experience that we can receive nourishment from, where we can recharge our batteries because of. I really believe that's what, food is here to do, is to
Mm-hmm.
support us, not destroy us.
Mm-hmm.
And the differentiation of like, are we using food to support us? Are we using it to destroy us? The power lies in our hands. So much of this is about reclaiming that power, and being able to make conscious and intentional decisions about how do we want our relationship with food to help us get to the next level, rather than always tearing us down and feeling like we're just trying to keep it all together.
Yeah, well said. Well, I was curious. You had mentioned about your digesting emotions program. Is that
Mm-hmm.
what it's called? What does that entail? Like, what if somebody were to want to look more deeply into the strategies, the things you cover, the tools?
Mm-hmm.
What would one find, or what could they expect to find?
So, digesting emotions is a tool. It's a tool that supports the building of emotional fitness. And it is a 9 step process, beginning to end, that is really takes a person through various stages of identifying emotions, connecting dots to why and what, and the deeper meanings behind it. And then where it eventually supports the client getting to is to understanding what is it that they need, and setting them up to fill that need in a healthy way. So, for example, the very first question that we ask in a digesting emotions experience or tool usage, is, what do you feel? So it starts first with identifying what the person is feeling. Are they feeling mad? Are they feeling sad? Are they feeling happy? Are they feeling scared? Are they feeling bad or shame or guilt? So it's first identifying what. But then the very, very last question, so once you go all the way through the tool, the very last question is, what do you need?
Hmm.
So once you've gone through the entire process, what it does is it supports you in being able to ask that question to yourself, and most of all, be able to answer it. So this is something that women who strive for excellence, like myself and my clients, that we don't even think of asking ourselves, of like, oh, what do I need? Because we're so used to doing, and doing so much for others. And one of the aspects of emotional eating is that we have these unmet emotional needs, unmet emotional needs that we try to fill, or we try to satiate through food. But ultimately, these unmet emotional needs, like food cannot touch, they cannot fill. So that's where a process like digesting emotions is something that can support the client in being able to understand what that unmet need is, and then be able to serve it and fulfill it without using food to get there. So The digesting emotions process is typically a written process at first. It's kind of like long division. And then as the client becomes more advanced and goes through the levels, it starts to become more shorthand and even starts to become just as natural as like, what do I want to wear today? It's like, well, what do I need today? And being able to easily ask, answer, and then move into action to fill those needs.
I love that analogy. From long division to shorthand. I love it. So
Yes.
it's about identifying unmet
Mhm.
needs, which become part of the treatment plan. It sounds like, to find ways to be more conscious, as you would say,
Yes.
and recognizing those in the moment and giving oneself permission to fulfill those needs,
Yeah.
to make
Yeah.
space.
Yes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's great. That's
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Well, it begs the question. So that's the program, but in your experience, what's the first steps one should take to recognize they have a problem, right? As an
Mm.
emotional eater, because do people just know, and by then is it too late, or are there some red flags?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give I'm going to give my honest answer to this question because it's a question that I get a lot and I have a lot of feelings. I have my own feelings about. Partly because one of the things about an emotional eater, before we get ourselves into a program or before we get ourselves help, is that we will usually be vacillating with denial. Oh, I'm not an emotional eater, even though I overeat, a couple of times a week. Oh, I'm not an emotional eater because I don't have hundreds of pounds to lose. Oh, I'm not an emotional eater because I'm a therapist or a health coach or, a fitness person. And, I know so much already about food. And the list goes on. So I found that for me, the people that I want to be connecting with and supporting with are the people who know on some level that they have issues with food. And similarly, like my journey, have been trying to find the support that's right for them, but are finding that they haven't found the right fit yet. In other words, they're looking at eating disorder clinics and being like, yeah, this just isn't a fit for me. This is too much. It's too extreme. I'm not there yet. And then they might be looking at other things and feel like, this is just too much on the surface. I need something deeper. I need to get to these deeper roots. So part of denial, knowing that denial is part of the process, I've found that sometimes it doesn't matter what I say. Because when someone is in denial, they're not going to hear you. But that being said, what I do want to offer is that a person's relationship with food is deeply personal and it is also deeply individual. So I can also spout off symptoms of what emotional eating is or isn't, how it may or may not be showing up in someone's life, but it's not always black and white. Um, these are like some of my own intricacies of how do we answer that question of how do you know you have a problem? Because the people who have a problem, they know. They do. There's just some level, usually, of denial or resistance playing out that has them hesitant or avoiding seeking help. I know for those of us who strive for excellence, there will come a level of shame or embarrassment of even just acknowledging that we have issues with food because we'll tell ourselves that we should have this figured out by now. We're insert how old you are here, like
Mm-hmm.
we'll we'll just kind of spout off all the reasons why we shouldn't have this problem, or we shouldn't have this thorn in our side. but at the end of the day, the thorn is there. So I think what I want to truly share is the choice is yours of whatever you want to, like, whatever you're experiencing in your relationship with food, your body, or anywhere in your life, you do have a choice of to face it and address it and look at it and inquire and research and talk to people and particularly talk to experts, or you can avoid it. And if you avoid it, it will be there again and again and again and again. So similarly, like I had that choice point, I had that fork in the road of, do I just resign and say, this is just my cross to bear, I'm just going to have this for the rest of my life? Or do I choose to change it? And I believe that we all have that choice, not just right here, right now, but we make that choice again and again and again and again. So if you're not enjoying what your relationship with food is doing for you, my invitation would be to choose to change it and then get the help you need to be able to follow through on that choice.
I love that. And so that kind of leads me to my next question. And thank you for that explanation, because that makes a lot of sense. Denial, right, is usually the first hurdle, right?
Mm-hmm.
That anyone has to get over, if they're going to see change, right?
Mm-hmm.
If somebody can't afford your program yet, or it's not accessible to them, what resources would you recommend to get them started? Like what would be a good touch point for them to start this process of healing?
Yes, I highly recommend going to innerwork.me. So, innerwork.me has a clarity quiz that will support you in identifying which of the four roots of emotional eating is most activated for you. So, it'll start peeling back the layers so you can start to see what's going on beneath the surface. It's not really about how much water you drank yesterday, and it's not really about are you or are you not addicted to sugar. There's things going on much more deeper beneath the surface. And this clarity quiz is the first place to start. Quiz, you'll also receive a beginner's guide that will give you a set of tools and a work of the quiz. And I would say this is the best place to start if you know that food and like nutrition and fitness is not really touching your relationship with food. You're not really seeing the results or the movement that you want. I highly recommend taking this different approach by taking the clarity quiz, receiving your results, then you'll receive the beginner's guide. And then we'll also be able to stay in touch where I can share additional tips, resources, and tools along the way through my weekly emails. So that's innerwork.me. Honestly, that is the best place to start.
Fantastic. So you've thought it through. So you've got all kinds of
Yes.
free, good information, some tactical steps people can take, and you're gonna hold their hand even if before they join the program, give them some actionable information, right? So
Yes. And I
thank you.
actually request that those who take the quiz to please email me your results, because I want to know what you received. I want to know about your process as you walk through those resources. So I want to hear back from the people who take the quiz so that I can hear how it's going and understand, did that resonate? Is this a surprise to you? And we can stay in touch as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And for those, of course, who want to know more about you, they can head right over to your website, right? escapefromemotionaleating.com.
Yes, that's home base.
This is you, home base, right? And as
That's
we
me.
mentioned, you've been featured on CBS, ABC, the CW, so you get around. Obviously, you're doing good
Yes.
work, right? And
Yes.
so
Thank
that's
you.
excellent. If anybody's interested in your credentials, you have all that listed here under your About page, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they can see your professional story background, your personal background, so that you evidently are walking the walk and talking the talk, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
as you mentioned, you didn't pull us out of your behind yesterday. So,
Exactly. I
I
did
love
not. And I literally state that on my website.
yes, yes, we see that. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me today and the audience and sharing your wisdom. You're doing wonderful, wonderful work. And this is, as I said, one of the bigger Goliaths in personal development. And so thank you for fighting the good fight and making a path for those who need the help.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
I would love to have you back on down the road and see how things are going if you don't mind. You know, the
Yes,
invite's always
I
open.
would love. I would love to be back, maybe even taking a different focus or piece of this. I would just, yeah, any way we can
Yeah.
keep
Oh, totally. We could deep
educating
dive, I'm sure.
people. Yeah.
any
Yeah.
any ancillary aspect here,
Yeah.
just around the mental health, even anxiety and depression. Now we know we just kind of drove past that anger piece, but I know that's a big one when
Oh,
it
yeah.
comes to poor eating habits. Just
Yeah.
compartmentalized or contained, unaddressed emotions, trauma,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
So that's a deep rabbit hole, we
Yeah.
could go down. But
Exactly.
today,
I'd be happy to talk about like anger and like food and women and yeah. What I mean, you throw out ideas, I will be there and be like, yes,
all right.
because I feel like anytime that we can just have the conversation about it, then when people are actually experiencing it, they don't feel so alone and they're
Mm-hmm.
more apt to, bring it forward in sessions or with whoever their support system is. So, yeah.
Oh, I appreciate that. Definitely, would appreciate you making time in the future. So let's
Yeah.
make it happen.
Sounds good. Yeah.
I appreciate you, Jessica. I will look forward to having you down in the future, having you on the show, and yeah,
Yeah,
and
let's
we'll do
do
this
this
again.
again. Okay.
All right.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Thank
You
you.
take care.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye. Hey, if you're getting value from this content and you haven't done so already, be sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel and podcast. And please do share with friends and family. It helps to raise mental health awareness. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts and don't mind taking just a moment, it would mean the world to me if you just left a review there. It really helps push it out to more people and raise mental health awareness. Thank you so much. Until next time, make good things happen. Bye bye.